Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for a roundtable on financial education and Able United. My name is Rachel Fackender, and I will serve as today's panel moderator. We wanted to bring you this discussion because our relationship with money is so important as financial decisions impact our everyday lives. And the key to success is equipping yourself with the knowledge and skills needed to manage money effectively. So today we're going back to the basics, covering topics like saving and investing, as well as opportunities for the disability community to plan for the future with third-party special needs trust and ABLE accounts. I am joined today by a team of advocates, experts, and most importantly, parents of individuals with disabilities who are passionate about helping individuals and families build a foundation of financial education so that they can begin saving for the future without fear. So our lineup today includes Able United Director John Finch.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining.
Certified public accountant at Assurance Dimensions in Jacksonville and an Able United account administrator for his son, Scott Matson.
Good morning, everyone.
And last but not least, a certified financial planner at Comerica Securities in Boca Raton, and again, another Able United account administrator for his daughter, Keith Seago.
Hi, all.
Thank you guys for being here. We're so excited for today's discussion, but before we get started, we are going to go ahead and run a quick poll to see who has or oversees an ABLE account. So we'll give everyone about 30 seconds to fill out this poll. Give it another 10 seconds, see those results coming in. Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. And you'll see those results pop up here. So looks like about 42% of our attendees do oversee or have an ABLE account and 52% no, 6% not being eligible for an ABLE account. So there might be some service providers on the line. So thank you guys for joining us today. So we're gonna go ahead and dive right into today's conversation. So Keith, we're gonna kick it off to you. Talk to us a little bit about the concept of saving.
Thank you, Rachel. Well, folks, I kind of, in conversations with my clients discussing the concept of savings, I kind of rely on three expressions to kind of bring this to life. One is begin with in mind. I mean, saving for saving's sake may be ultimately good, but have something in mind in terms of a plan, in terms of something that you're saving for. The other expression is pay yourself first. You know, we find that as people get comfortable with their income, they don't usually consider paying themselves first. They usually consider paying for their mortgage, their food, their fun. At the end of the month, there may not be anything left for yourself. So we suggest setting that money aside, pay yourself first. And then finally, I like protect yourself from yourself. We are creatures of habit, and we oftentimes may find ourselves becoming victims or buying into that consumer mentality that you absolutely need this new widget now, this new phone now. And one of the ways to protect yourself from yourself is have this pay yourself mentality, begin with a savings plan in mind, and then have it automatically put into your savings account, wherever that is. So savings ultimately should begin probably with a rainy day or what if fund to pay for unanticipated emergencies or events, medical copays, deductibles, broken heaters if you're in Texas, or air conditioners if you're in Florida, leaky roofs, reduced income that comes from loss of job due to an illness or an injury, or just being fired. So those are kind of the rainy days that we all eventually or usually encounter. Typically, we recommend 3 to 6 months of replacement savings things that you will need if your income stops, and the ability to have a 3 to 6 month cushion that's readily available and liquid and safe, available for these unanticipated events or experiences is a typical recommendation. This account should be separate. It should be dedicated for these events and not something that you dip in typically for some sort of impulse purchase, but truly something unanticipated, an emergency, or like I suggested, some of the other events that we come across. This savings, this emergency fund shouldn't be done in a vacuum. It should be part of a comprehensive approach to your savings plan. Along with the emergency funds, you may have another account set up for short or intermediate term savings for, a new replacement vehicle, a home improvement that you have plans for. That may be not an emergency, but something that you can plan for and segregate from your emergency fund. And then finally, long-term savings, plans for retirement. For some of you, it may be many, many years down the road, but the defense or opportunity to fulfill that retirement objective is starting earlier, not later. College or secondary schools for your children. Longer term savings plans that also might have different in savings or investment characteristics than short or emergency fund monies. And finally, for some of you older folks like me, maybe leaving a legacy for the kids or for charities when you're no longer around. Yet another vehicle, perhaps, for some of you to consider. So again, begin with that end in mind, create that emergency fund, pay down, consolidate debt, that may be part of it, identify your short and intermediate goals, establish your retirement goals, and then finally, take action. None of this works on paper. It takes some action and to implement. That's
Awesome.
the size of it.
Great advice, Keith. Thank you for sharing that. So now that we've talked a little bit about saving, I want to talk about the topic of investment. So what is investing? So Scott, I'm going to kick it over to you to kind of explain that and kind of speak very generally about investing and how it works.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Rachel. While Keith is a professional here and he's given some great advice, I do have a few thoughts. Let's address each of your questions, starting with what is investing and how does it work? Investing at its simplest form is buying ownership in something, hoping that it increases in value so you can sell it one day for a profit or more than you paid for it. Investing for most of us involves two things: either buying a small portion of a company, say when you buy a mutual fund or stock, or loaning the money to the bank, which is what you're doing when you put the money in a savings account or buy a certificate of deposit. The bank turns around and loans that money and pays you interest for you giving them the money in your savings account. Your other point of what should we look for when investing, I'd recommend considering, one, the reputation of the organization you're investing with and the fees they charge. Two, your personal investment goals. Mainly, do you need the money soon and you have to have a short-term strategy, or is the money needed for in the future, which means you have a long-term strategy? And three, what is your risk tolerance? Fourth point is that you should invest in things you understand. And while not the only option out there, mutual funds provide us with a lot of choices. When you buy a mutual fund, you're buying a small piece of stock of various companies. Mutual funds are a basket of various companies' stock in various industries and are set up to give us the opportunity to diversify or spread out our risk, and the ability to focus on different company sizes, from large, medium, small, from well-established companies to startups, and different markets as well. And they often have low fees. While investing involves risk, which means that there aren't guarantees that you'll make money and that you could see your investment lose value, the stock market has proven to be a very good choice. For example, the S&P 500 index originally began in 1926 as the composite index comprised of only 90 stocks. The S&P 500 through 2018 from its inception has had an annual return of 10%. And this far exceeds what certificates of deposit or bank savings accounts can offer. Maybe Keith has some different thoughts about that, but that's my general thought. investing.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. So now that we've kind of set the foundation a little bit about saving and investing, I want to talk about the ways that the disability community can save. So John, you're the ABLE expert here. Set the foundation and really kind of shed a little bit of light to our attendees who may be unfamiliar with ABLE accounts. How did they come to be?
Wonderful. Thank you for that lead in, Rachel. And before we do that, I kind of want to take a step back, just thinking how this is a back to the basics type of webinar, and ask you this poll question. Do you have a savings goal? Whether that be for an individual with a disability, maybe you yourself, but do you have an end mind on what am I saving for? What does that look like in the future, whether that be for retirement, or maybe it's something like Keith said, where it's just for an emergency, that rainy day fund. And so I'm just gonna give everybody a few seconds to answer this poll, and it just really helps us frame in mind who the audience is today.
Seeing those numbers coming in, and it's looking like the majority say yes. Love seeing that.
That's awesome. Let's give everybody another second here too. Wonderful, you can see that. And so most of you, yes, 82% of you are saying yes, you have a savings goal, which is great. And what happened with ABLE accounts is, if you think about just 5 years ago, the ability for an individual with a disability, a severe disability, who relied on public benefits, to be able to save was just about non-existent. It was treated unfairly. They were kind of set in a situation to where they had to stay impoverished in order to keep Medicaid or supplemental security income benefits, or even HUD housing. And so that limit of $2,000 in assets really wasn't enough to cover a rainy day situation, whether that be a loss of employment, a broken air conditioning if you're here in Florida, or even just transportation on a monthly basis if you relied on transportation from somebody else. But thanks to the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act, which passed in 2014, this federal legislation allowed states to create ABLE programs. Here in the state of Florida, we are ABLE United. And what this did was it allowed individuals with disabilities for the first time to start saving or investing for a better life experience, which is what ABLE stands for. Now, there are 3 requirements for individuals who are looking to open an ABLE account. One is that here in the Florida, since we are run by the state of Florida, you have to be a Florida resident at the time you apply. The other 2 are true for all ABLE programs. And as I said, each state gets to set these up. So to date, there are about 43 programs across the country. Of that, which includes Washington, D.C. has set up a program. And each state kind of dictates if they're going to be open for residents only, if they're going to work with other states, or if they're going to open up nationwide. And so here in Florida, we have chosen at this time to kind of like our partner with Florida Prepaid, because that's who we're under, to be open to Florida residents. But these other 2 requirements are true for all ABLE account holders. One is that the individual has to have a diagnosis of a severe impairment prior to the age of 26. And that disability, like I said, has to be severe. And so if you think of a lot of types of disabilities that happen at birth or diagnosed at birth, you think Down syndrome, a lot of times cerebral palsy happens early on in life, but also disabilities that occur later in life. A lot of the mental health type of diagnoses, whether that be paranoid schizophrenia or bipolar, or diagnosed later in life, but those severe types of disabilities would qualify for an ABLE account. And once again, the diagnosis has to happen prior to age 26. And so it doesn't matter the age of the individual. Now we have people in our program, they're in their 80s, which is exciting. But we also have newborns who have an account and can have an ABLE account for the rest of their life. And just to kind of give you some background on ABLE and how people get started is it's all online, which is really great, which allows people to set up an account, manage it from the comfort of their own home instead of going into a bank. And that's how people are able to manage it. And one of the key advantages of an ABLE account is it's a tax advantage account. And I know I think we're gonna have Scott talk a little bit about what that means to have a tax-free or tax advantage savings and investment account.
Awesome. Thank you, John. And I know that some of our panelists, or rather some of our attendees, in addition to ABLE accounts, might have also heard about special needs trusts. So I want to kick this one over to Keith for him to kind of cover the biggest difference between ABLE accounts and special needs trusts.
Thank you again, Rachel. While I'm no expert, I'm certainly not an attorney. My advice comes as a practitioner and as a layperson in that regard. Special needs trusts were essentially a vehicle, an account titling, if you will, that permitted assets to be placed inside this trust and protected from the Medicaid spin down rules that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The person cannot have above a certain threshold of assets or earnings because it would jeopardize their benefits. So the special needs trust was a way to put assets in a protected trust that were available through the trustee of that trust to enrich the beneficiary's life. So that there was no limit, there's no limit to how much you can put into these trusts, and various types of assets, including things like real estate, can be held inside these trusts, these special needs trusts. It requires an attorney to construct or create the trust. It requires a trustee to manage the trust for the benefit of the beneficiary. It requires money, obviously, to put into the trust, and money to maintain this vehicle. So clearly, you know, the ABLE is not an either or. The ABLE United account is not an either or to a special needs trust. In fact, many people have both. The special needs trust assets can actually be used to fund an ABLE United account. You know, pure and simply, I think the differences include that, you know, ABLE accounts grow tax-free, which is a huge benefit when you consider the savings that comes from not having to pay taxes on assets that are used for the ward's, or not the ward, excuse me, the beneficiary's benefit. Again, ABLE accounts require that disability occurring prior to age 26. Special needs trust does not. The ABLE accounts are limited to $15,000. The special needs trusts essentially have no limit. So I think special needs trusts are more flexible. They can be within the control of the beneficiary. The costs are substantially less. There are no upfront costs. There are a few charges here and there, but no cost for attorneys drawing up documents. They have that tax advantage, but they also have the limits in terms of how much you can put in. So they're both tools that are designed to preserve benefits for the beneficiary in different ways. And again, like I said earlier, they're complementary. So that's your layperson's explanation of the difference between ABLE United accounts and special needs trusts. So
thank you for that, Keith. Very much appreciated. A very complex topic, but you'll see here on the screen a little bit of an overview between the difference of special needs trusts and, of course, ABLE accounts. But we're going to go ahead and move on here. So I want to kick this back over to Scott. You know, for parents looking to teach their children about money or saving, what advice would you give them?
Good question. My advice starts with the need to understand what real assets are. As a CPA, the standard definition of an asset, simplified, is a resource with economic value that will provide a future benefit. For most of us, our home is our biggest asset on our personal financial statement. My definition of an asset is slightly different when it comes to investing. I picked up this alternate definition from a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. While not the traditional definition, to me, an asset puts money in your pocket. Though necessary, a car and a house are not quote unquote assets under this alternate definition because they do not put money in your pocket. While these are assets for personal and corporate financial statements, they use up a lot of cash, and if you're not careful, can drain your financial resources. The car, for example, depreciates in value and requires upkeep and repairs. The house typically increases in value, but you're often financing it. And So there's the principal and interest on the mortgage, the homeowner's insurance, as well as the upkeep and repairs. Don't get me wrong, I don't advise anyone to forego buying a house or a car. Instead, I try to get them to remove some of the emotions of these purchases and buy what they can afford and not think of them as assets for investing purposes. Of course, there are plenty of people out there that invest in real estate and even those that invest in cars, but that isn't the case for most of us. So I encourage people to take their money and invest it to buy real assets, the things that will pay them, such as investing in mutual funds, pay dividends, and have the potential to increase in value. Remember the performance of the S&P 500 that I previously mentioned. It has had an annual average return of 10% over 92 years. To me, the goal of investing is to create additional wealth to give you financial freedom. In essence, to give you choices and options. Investing is pervasive, yet simple at its core. It's deciding what to do with you. Even deciding to put your paycheck in a savings account is basically an investing decision. So my overall advice comes down to, 1, start somewhere, anywhere, but just start investing, even if it's a small amount. 2, build on what you started. Each year, increase your giving. When you get a raise, a promotion, or take a new job and you make more, consider giving more to your ABLE account. No amount is too small. 3, invest in what you understand. Don't put your money in things that don't make sense to you. And 4, educate yourself on investing and financing. By attending today's webinar, you are doing that. It's important to understand your own options. You've worked hard to earn the money you have. Expect the same from your money. It should be working hard for you. Thanks, Rachel.
Love that. So, when it comes to ABLE accounts, we do get a lot of questions about how it works. So, John, let's briefly discuss about how can you request or withdraw money from an ABLE account, as well as who can contribute to an account, and are there any limits to how much an individual can contribute each year?
Yeah, good question. So as I mentioned earlier, think of an ABLE account kind of like an online bank account. Most all of the programs today are all online, and so ABLE United is no different. So when you go to your online account, that's where you will manage it. That is how you will request withdrawals to be made the most effective way. And usually you'll connect some kind of checking or savings account. And when those accounts are connected, then that's how you'll put money into the ABLE account through that connected bank account. And then when you withdraw funds, it will go back to a connected bank account. But you can also request funds to be distributed to you via a check. And you can also call customer service to have some of this done, because I know sometimes it's just easier to call somebody and talk to somebody over the phone and have them do it for you after they verify your information. Contributions are similar, where if you wanted to contribute, you could go online to your account and contribute from that connected bank account. But we also have the feature that allows individuals to set up gifting pages. Now, these are unique online pages where people can give to their family or friends, even put on social media, which will allow individuals to contribute to your account directly. Also, people can mail in a check as well. We have forms available on our website. And there is a limit of how much you can contribute to an ABLE account each year, and that's $15,000 per year. And that goes up every few years. It's based on the gifting tax limitations, and that's from all sources. Now, if an individual is working, and let's say they're not saving for retirement, maybe there's just not a retirement plan offered, or they're not investing on their own in a Roth IRA or something, some other kind of retirement vehicle, they could contribute what they call able to work contributions, and those allow individuals to contribute above that $15,000 amount, and they could potentially take advantage of the Savers Credit, which will allow them to reduce their tax burden each year. So, but yeah, so $15,000 per year, and then these accounts can get up to $100,000 for individuals on SSI. Individuals not worried about SSI, they can get above that and go up to $418,000, which even with a good rate of return will take you 20 plus years to get to. So come back to me when you hit that limit and we'll talk if I'm still here.
Awesome. So, we talk a lot about ABLE accounts being tax-free. I know that we've covered this a little bit at the beginning of today's roundtable, but Scott, can you explain a little bit more about what that means?
Absolutely. This is one of the strongest arguments for starting an ABLE account. To be able to create a benefit for your child that won't be subject to income tax. Distributions are tax-free if used for qualified disability expenses. As an example, the ABLE account funds can be directly accessed by the disabled individual or their guardian to use for the following qualified disability-related expenses: medical expenses, transportation, legal fees, schooling, housing expenses, and purchasing disability therapies and assistive technologies. There are other qualified expenses. You should consult with your tax preparer for a more complete list. But there's also the issue with our children with disabilities being able to access disability benefits through Medicare. When people with special needs apply for disability benefits, they must show that they do not have enough money to support themselves independently. And any money a person has in a traditional bank account counts against that person's ability to qualify for disability benefits. As John's mentioned, up to $100,000 in an ABLE account is considered an exempt, non-countable resource for the purposes of determining Medicaid and supplemental security income eligibility. In fact, more than $100,000 can be held in an ABLE account if only Medicaid is needed, but SSI is not, as John has mentioned. This is nice since without it, assets cannot rise above $2,000 to qualify for SSI and Medicaid. Also, as John's mentioned, when Congress passed the Achieving a Better Life Experience, the ABLE Act in 2014, in response to this disparity, states put this in their ABLE counts in place, and we don't have to worry about that $2,000 threshold. So if you think about what you might be doing for your other children, or you've been familiar with it, you've heard of 529 college savings accounts. So when the ABLE account was enacted, it amended Section 529 of the IRS code to add in this tax qualification or tax qualified plan, the ABLE account, and the accounts will grow tax-free for you. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Scott. So we're seeing a lot of questions come in about investments. So it's a perfect time to kind of drive our conversation in that direction. So Keith, let's break down the ABLE United investment options. So can you give us a little bit of an overview of the pre-designed options and their benefits?
Sure, Rachel. So, you know, when you look at the range of investment options inside the ABLE United model, you see that there are several. They're everything from an FDIC guaranteed account that you can put money in, not unlike a bank account that's backed by the Federal Depository Insurance Corporation, which is the government, to all stock funds. And so managed by BlackRock and Vanguard, who are, you know, first-rate investment firms. So as you look at these, there are places that I call an ability to be dangerous. Because if you don't have the background or the investment experience or interest or time to pick and choose individual funds, which you can do here, you're better off using the pre-designed funds that ABLE United offers. They include a conservative fund, a moderate fund, and a growth fund. So what's the difference? It has to do with how these funds are allocated between stocks and bonds and cash. So the more stocks you have, the more risk and the more potential reward that account brings. So it follows that a growth fund would have the opportunity to grow at a higher rate or grow, but also have more risk. With more risk comes more reward potential. And Rachel, I don't know if you have had an opportunity to share that. Yeah, so there we go. Thank you. So you can see the three funds and you can see the percentages allocated to the various investments, the stock, the international, the bond, and the money market. So I like these for folks who really don't have the time or the background to manage, because what you just need to do is determine determine what kind of investor you are for this particular account. Are you a conservative investor? Are you the person who really is just dipping their toe in the stock market? In this case, about a 40% allocation in the conservative. If you're a little more, or you have more time and you're a little more ambitious in terms of growth, you can raise that stock allocation to about 60% in the moderate. Again, raising the risk, but also raising the long-term growth potential. And then if you have even more of a taste for risk and a desire for higher reward potential, you can move into the growth allocation, which has even a higher allocation to stocks. So one of the question is, yeah, well, how do I really know if I'm conservative or growth or moderate investor? There are opportunities working through folks like myself, as well as plenty of online tools that you can discover for yourself, something called a risk tolerance questionnaire. I use this with all of my clients because they may have an intuitive sense of what kind of investor they are, but this kind of confirms those suspicions. They ask a series of questions about your thoughts about the market, your time horizon in the market, and it gives your advisor or yourself, if you're doing it on your own, an opportunity to see where you fall within those three zones: conservative, moderate, or growth. So that's part of the conversation, part of the determination of where you go with some of those monies that you want to place into the investment world, into the stock market, if you will. But remember, we mentioned FDIC and money market funds. Those are also not mutually exclusive to investing in these funds, because you can put funds in many different buckets, as it were, regarding your Able United account. And as I alluded to earlier in my discussions about savings, you may have a shorter term time horizon for money you want to set aside to buy a car. So for example, for my own daughter, she wants to buy a replacement vehicle, a fairly low price point. And those monies don't really need to be invested as aggressively to get those long-term returns, because that's a short or intermediate term goal for her. So she may put those in the conservative or even the FDIC bucket to accumulate the money she needs to buy that new car. On the other hand, she may have aspirations to put money on a down payment on a home. That may not be for another 10 to 20 years, but those monies could be held in a more aggressive allocation, like the moderate or the growth funds that are offered. So hopefully you get my idea that, as we talked about earlier, depending on your investment objectives and your time horizon, you may want to use multiple vehicles within your Able United account to address all of those different goals. But again, these preset, they're managed by professionals. They maintain the allocations as represented in the view that you saw that Rachel displayed. And you have an idea then, and you don't have to be on top of this 24/7, because you've got this pre-populated and managed approach to investing. Scott alluded to the stock, the S&P 500 and over how it's performed since 1926, and those numbers are consistent with my data as well. Not to fact check him, but one very important identifying characteristics for an investor is it's not timing the market. We've heard so much of that recently, with people jumping in and jumping out of GameStop as one particular notorious stock of note. That's not the way you make money and build wealth in the market. It's time in the market. It's having at least a 3 to 5 year or longer time horizon that will give you that opportunity to build wealth. And compared to cash, cash has its place. But if you really want to take advantage of what the stock market has historically offered, and like Scott said, 10% per year in the S&P since 1926, you've got to, perhaps, again, everybody's situation is different, consider putting some money to work in the market. But don't go in with the notion that you're going to jump in and out every year or 2 years. You've got to have that 3 to 5 year or longer time horizon to be able to go through this roller coaster of ups and downs, because over time, historically speaking, but no guarantee of the future, over time, that has proven to be the best strategy to build wealth. And that's staying invested, keeping your emotions out of it, because I know Scott mentioned emotions, and that is a big factor of protecting yourself from yourself. Thank you.
Awesome. Great information. Thank you so much for sharing that, Keith. So, John, I want to bring it back to you here. So talk a little bit about how account holders can change their money that is allocated in an ABLE account once they go through the investment process.
Good question. So if you think about as you start to save or invest, your needs may change, how you want to be in the market, or if you want to move back to a more conservative approach. To be able to do all of those things are allowable. First, when you contribute to the account, you get to select how you want those funds to go into the ABLE account each time you invest. So maybe you want to invest in a conservative portfolio. If you want to stick to the FDIC option, if you want to split, every time you contribute, you can do that. Or you can even set up automatic contributions, and those can also change as you go along. Now, funds are already invested into the program. By federal law, those can only be changed twice per year. So, be mindful of that. If you are watching it daily, even though you probably shouldn't, if you have a long-term investment and you're like, oh no, I better get out of the market, and I make that change from a more risky type of investment to something more conservative, and then later you want to change it back. Well, if you did those two changes, that's all you allowed per year, calendar year, that is. And so that's just something to keep in mind. If you are investing and saving, you want to reallocate your funds.
Great. And I'm seeing some questions rolling in too about fees. So can you talk a little bit about the fees associated with our investment options as well as ABLE accounts in general?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so we kind of alluded to this earlier. ABLE accounts generally are much low-cost options, right? And so here in the Florida, we tried to be the most low-cost and best value for Florida residents. So there are no application fees or monthly maintenance fees. If you want to enroll in our optional ABLE Visa prepaid card, which allow people another way to access funds in their account, there is a $2.50 per month fee for that. But then our investment options actually do have a small fee tied to them. They call this an investment management fee. And this is basically the fee that it costs the program to offer Vanguard options and BlackRock options. Now, it's pretty minor. It's up to what they call basis points, but 0.29% annualized on the investment. So if you're thinking, how much does that really cost? Well, let's say you had $1,000 on there and you made 5%. Well, actually, you only probably made 4.89% or something very, very small. We took a small percentage of that to pay the investment. So when you look at the returns on the account, those returns are what we call net of fee returns. So that small, what we call an investment administration fee, is taken out of the returns on the program. And those range from 0%, which is our FDIC option, where there are no fees attached to it, up to our most aggressive option, which is 0.29% annualized.
Great. So again, seeing tons of questions coming through. Thank you to all of our participants for sending those in. We're going to go ahead and cover a few of those at this moment in time. So first question, Scott, I'm going to get this one to you. Is electronic banking safe?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer with ABLE United is a definite yes. But remember that this is not necessarily online banking like you would have with Bank of America or Chase Bank, but rather online investing. Both are safe if you follow some basic steps to protect your information. Here are some tips for safely investing online. One, always type in the bank's website in your browser and don't use a link that you were emailed or received via text message. Two, make sure the website is using HTTPS web address before logging in. This is a sign that it's secure, and the ABLE United's website through Someday Plan Management is secure, and this is denoted by a lock symbol or lock icon in the web address. Three, you should change your password on a regular basis. And if you use a password manager, don't forget to change that password too. With Someday, it requires your password to be changed every 90 days. You should use a multi-factor authentication. This is a two-step process. It might seem like extra work, but it adds another layer of security to your account. This is usually in the form of receiving a code via text, and Able United has a two-step authentication process using a verification code via either email, text, or phone, and this is also required to be changed every 90 days. And you should use a unique password. Please make sure that your bank password or your investment password isn't the same you're using everywhere else, to just make sure you're protecting yourself.
Awesome, great answer. So another question, how do I go about finding a financial advisor? Keith, I know that you touched on this briefly, but what kind of advice or recommendations would you give someone who is in search of a financial advisor?
Well, there's a lot of good ones out there, but there's a lot of ones that are just posing as such. And one place to go in particular is, as Rachel mentioned earlier, I'm a certified financial planner. That's a designation that requires a lot of study, maybe not as much as Scott's CPA, but it gives us enough to be dangerous with. It takes several years, at least for me. The CFP website, f.org, frankpapa.org, will make referrals of qualified and certified financial planners. We have to endure an ongoing continuing education, and we have to pay a significant fee to maintain that status, and they watch us. I would go with a larger firm that is supported by a broker dealer, whether it's a bank, through a bank broker dealer, or through like a Raymond James or UBS. I think, as much as I'm not trying to advertise for them or myself, I think you really do need to have this person who has the backing of a big firm. The CFP website is a great place to find folks in your area. And of course, there's always referrals, but people have gotten in trouble with referring people because they themselves have been duped by this person. So, do your due diligence and ask a lot of questions of that person. You can also go onto broker.org, which is a financial industry regulatory FINRA site that's called Broker Check. And you can click on that site and put in the name of the advisor who you are interviewing or considering, and that will bring up their history in terms of any kinds of disciplinary actions or lawsuits per se. I don't think they call it that, but at least you get a history, and you can feel comfortable to ask that person, have you had any claims against you or your firm based on your advice? We have nothing to hide, or if we do, then that's probably a sign to keep moving.
Right, absolutely. So I'm seeing a couple of questions come in regards to, is an Able account an account that they can fund as a savings account, or does it have to be an investment account? So John, I want you to take this question because we do get it often, right? Is there an opportunity to separate your savings and your investments in an Able account?
Yes, and so that's what's so great about Able accounts, is that they can be both a savings and an investment account. And so it's up to that individual. Like I said, when somebody goes to contribute, they have to select, do I want this to go into the FDIC option? Do I want to go into a conservative portfolio? It really gives them the flexibility to kind of have this as a savings or an investment account, one or the other, or both. And when somebody takes funds out of the account, it's the same way, where you can select, I want money to come out of my FDIC option or one of my portfolio options. It really gives people the flexibility to allow them to separate it. And now when it comes to withdrawal, and I'm going to steal your moderation duty here, but there's several questions on when can I make a withdrawal? Is there some kind of time horizon or time limit? And the great thing is Able accounts really allow you to withdraw funds when you need them. We didn't really touch about qualified disability expenses, but as long as individuals are using these funds to help improve or maintain their health, independence, or quality of life, then it's a qualified disability expense. and there's no taxes on any earnings portion of that withdrawal. So let's say, for example, I've had an account for several months. Oh, I want to use this money to help pay for my upcoming medical appointment that's not covered by my insurance. Well, you can take the money out of the ABLE account and pay for that. People that I know have the prepaid debit card, use it for Uber and Lyft to get around town, because that's helping them get out more in the community and help them achieve a better life experience. So it is pretty flexible. And once again, there is no penalty for withdrawing the funds. But if you do take the money out and let's say you're not using it for a qualified disability expense, you will receive tax forms, and it will show you the earnings portion of that withdrawals that you had for the year, and those may be subject to income tax or an additional penalty of 10% on that if you're using it for non-qualified disability expenses. But usually I tell people, hey, if it's for that person with the disability and they're using it for something that's improving or maintaining their life, then it's going to be a qualified expense.
Awesome. Let's see, you're just checking the box there on a couple of questions that came in, so thank you for that. But have a good question here, and Keith, I'm going to bring this one back to you. An attendee says, we are planning for our daughter to open an ABLE account for long-term purposes with the goal for her to buy her own property within a period of 20 years. Is there any recommendation in terms of a portfolio option that would be best for that particular goal that you would recommend?
Well, I normally describe a long-term investment objective as 10 years or longer. So it seems that this person's daughter has that. And if you look at the market, you can see that probably a growth portfolio, pre-managed growth portfolio would be indicated, notwithstanding other factors that might come up. But at the very least, I would look to turn up the equity exposure through the growth prearranged account as you get closer. And this is, we didn't get into this, but as a person maybe moves closer, say 5 years out, you may at that point move that growth money from there to the conservative, or maybe even to the money market or FDIC account, because as you get closer and your time horizon gets smaller, your tolerance for risk in the market should go down. It's just the same as with your 401k. If you have one, we have an expectation that we're going to retire in 5 years, and we don't have the time to make up. So keep that in mind, not completely automated, but put that on your calendar to readdress every year to see if it's time to move some or all of that money to a more conservative model.
Awesome. So again, seeing some questions in regards to tax forms, because again, we are on the cusp of tax season. So John, can you elaborate a little bit more about the different forms that they might receive as an account holder or account administrator?
Yeah. So when someone makes a withdrawal, what's going to happen is in the back end, we're going to issue you eventually in the next calendar year, at the end of the calendar year. So this time of season, we have until January 31. So if you had any withdrawals from your ABLE account last year, you should have received a 1099-QA from us. And so basically what this is saying is it's a report that we send to the IRS saying, Mr. Joe here, he had an ABLE account, he had a $2,000 withdrawal. Of that $2,000, let's say 200 of it was earnings, okay? And so what you're gonna do is you're gonna keep that and hold that, and if you file your taxes, it's gonna ask you, did you have an ABLE account? Did you have any withdrawals? Were there any non-qualified withdrawals? So any non-qualified funds for the year, or you didn't have any qualified expenses. At that point, you would be subject to file that and claim that $200, which would have to pay taxes on it. Generally, most people, this is not going to impact, because most everybody's going to have qualified disability expenses when they make a withdrawal, whether that be for basic living expenses like groceries or housing, they bought clothes, just about you can name it. And so it won't quite require you to file taxes. What we tell people is, though, if you do make a withdrawal, keep your receipts and a note on why it's qualified disability expenses. We're not going to ask for it as a program, but the IRS very much will. And if you're on Social Security or supplemental security income, so that's that monthly SSI check that helps pay for food, housing, and rent sort of items, they will look at these accounts monthly. And if you do make a withdrawal, they will require documentation on what it was used for. So once again, we're not going to ask you what it's going to be used for, but the IRS could, and Social Security if you're on SSI. But be on the lookout when you do make a withdrawal. You will get a 1099-QA, and it's more just of a record letting you know that you had a withdrawal in your account.
Awesome. And then last question before we start to wrap things up, also seeing a ton of questions in regards to employment and how that impacts ABLE accounts. So John, I'm going to give this one back to you and to talk a little bit about the employment piece and how Able to Work works.
Yeah, so that's great. So Able to Work was an addition to the ABLE Act that came through the big tax cut budget from about 2 or 3 years ago, I believe, is when they passed this huge budget. And in there, there's this piece on what they call Able to Work is what it's better known as. But what it did was it allowed individuals to now say, okay, I want to use my ABLE account as a retirement account. Maybe I don't have access to a retirement account, or maybe my employer doesn't offer one. And so they said, how can we use an ABLE account kind of like a retirement account or something similar to that? And so what Able to Work allows is now individuals who are working, not saving for retirement, can use that ABLE account as a retirement account. It lets them contribute above the $15,000 amount, or they can designate it as an Able to Work contribution, which they could take advantage of what they call a saver's credit, which basically reduces the tax burden from somebody. And so although funds contribute to the ABLE account from employment, let's say you were working and you put your full paycheck into ABLE account, it still counts as earned income for those various public benefit programs. So remember, ABLE accounts don't shelter earned income, they shelter assets. So it keeps people below the $2,000 asset limit that a lot of these public benefit programs have.
Awesome. And then just one point of clarification, seeing a question here about what types of non-qualified disability expenses are there. So John and I say there's the magic 4, and that is, of course, yes, gambling, giving the money away, alcohol, and tobacco. So those are the 4 that we always say would be considered non-qualified disability expenses. Everything else is on the table as long as it is for the overall benefit of the individual with a disability. So another great question, but just keep those 4 in mind. So doing a quick time check. So we are coming to the end of our time together today, but before we conclude, I do want to open up the floor for any last words. So Scott, let's start with you. What is the #1 piece of advice you find yourself giving for individuals who are planning for the future?
That's a great question. Sometimes, in some ways, hard to sum up with one action item, but if I had to boil it down to one suggestion, it would be to act now, right now, today, due to the investment options offered by Able United and that the earnings are tax-free. You will see a better result if you invest today instead of waiting until tomorrow. I started small and built it up over the years. The Able account is one piece of our family's investment plan for our son, and a very important one. We hope our son has a long life and that he will outlive us. He may get a job one day, but we're unsure if he'll be able to live independently or earn enough to save for his current and future needs. Like you, we care deeply for our children, and we want them to be taken care of, especially when they can't take care of themselves. There's uncertainty out there for my son who has Down syndrome, so I started this Able account with what I could afford and slowly increased the monthly contributions over the years. Investing can be intimidating, but if you start with small steps, such as investing $25 a month, you will be on the road to creating a benefit for your son or daughter that gives them real benefits and, most importantly, choices. Financial habits give a person choices, and that's what I want for my son. The ability to have choices one day, just like typically developing people have. We're very pleased with the performance of the funds we've invested in through Able United, and we know that our son will be okay whether he's able to get a job one day or not. He will have those choices.
I love that. Thank you, Scott. Keith, same question.
Well, Scott stole most of my thunder, but I could not agree more with him. Take action now, act now, open the account for as little as $25, as Scott said. Identify and commit to a goal. One of the purposes of an Able United was to empower my daughter, who has some psychological challenges, but she is able to work. I want her to get from being a receiver, a beneficiary of, the government, so to speak, to being a participant in her own future, to help her play a role in providing financial security and a better life for she and my grandson. So this Able United account is really a gift that we have in terms of not only improving the quality of our life of our beneficiary, but in a material way, but also in a psychological way. They can become a participant. You can invite others, as John mentioned earlier, regarding setting up gifting pages. I've done that for her as well, and it takes a village sometimes, and these gifting pages help my daughter help herself. So by reaching out to others who may have a desire to participate in her success.
Thank you for sharing that, Keith. We're so fortunate to meet so many of our account holders and account administrators, and these two gentlemen have been with us for quite some time. And today was a little bit of a 1-2 punch. You got to hear from financial experts, but also parents too. So thank you guys for taking time out of your Thursday morning to be with us. But we're gonna give John the last word here. For those attending who don't have an Able account, here's your time to pitch them and why they should consider opening one.
Well, if Keith and Scott didn't sell you on it, I don't know what will. The words from hearing it from actual account administrators or beneficiaries speaks tones that I can't. And so I'm humbled to be a servant of the state of Florida and to be able to run this program. But usually I tell people, at the end of the day, just the benefits of an Able account are just so numerous that whether it be tax-free advantage because maybe you're not relying on public benefits, but you want your money to go further, or maybe you are or potentially could be eligible for government benefits and restricted to only $2,000. And so now an Able account allows you and family and friends to help you have more than that. And so it's just those simple things that I think we take into the mindset, and then better said than both of them is just act now. The great benefit of the program is being able to do it online. So you don't have to go down to a bank or make an appointment, but you can. And that's something we've started recently is saying, hey, maybe I just need a little more one-on-one time. And you can go to our website, look us up and set up those appointments to meet with Rachel or I or other of our team members to just discuss Able accounts and what your needs are. But hopefully you found this very beneficial. I know, Rachel, we have some work to do. There are several more questions that we weren't able to get to today, but we will definitely reach back out to you all. And hopefully this presentation will let you know that, it all starts with just achieving a better life experience. And that's the name of the program. So
awesome. Well, yes. And to John's point, we just last month introduced Able office hours. So you visit us on our website, ableunited.com, and click on the events tab. You can book your 15-minute session with us, and you will have the opportunity to meet with us virtually, since we, of course, can't be out in the communities right now. But everyone, knowledge is power. So thank you so much for joining us, and to our panelists for taking the time to share your expertise and your passion. Thank you again so much. And to John's point, we have several questions to get through. So if we did not respond directly to you or answer your question through today's webinar, we will be working to answer as many questions as we can over the next week or so. So be on the lookout for a personalized email from us. But thank you all for joining us. Until next time, thank you.